Hello everybody. We're sitting on the standard map Farming Sim '09. I just took a tractor up here. We're kind of at the top of a hill. Next to the corn patch, just started up a clean save, and I'm looking at the sky. This is, most of the time, I think, when we're farming, we're focused on the ground, we're focused on our crops, focused on our machines, maybe like that car over there. I know there's a boat in the water. We're focused on everything on the ground. And a couple years ago, I wanted to say, we never really focus on the sky in terms of what's above us and the ambiance that the ad has. And I know more recent versions of Farming Sim has a what they call a dynamic sky. But in these older versions of Farming Sim, I believe up until Farm Sim 17, or excuse me, Farm Sim 19, they used what's called a skybox. And a skybox, all it is just exactly as it sounds. We are inside a box, a huge box, a huge 3D object that sits overhead of us in the map. And on the inside of the box is printed what we see, the sky, the clouds, the blue sky, and everything else. And most of the time, as we know, we basically are limited in what we see. A standard day, kind of like we have right now, we see clouds. I don't know that we can typically see the sun. Well, I guess we can kind of right there. And we know that when it's sundown, the texture will change to a sunset. And so I think we're looking to the west here. We'll see it turn shades of red and orange, so forth. And the picture that we see will change the position of the clouds. And then when it's nighttime, there's another texture for that. Maybe the moon comes out. We'll see a few clouds at night or whatever, but it looks different from what we see during the day. And then in the morning, as we look east here, we will see a sunrise. So those are the basic four textures, if you will, that we see in here. And then, and I guess there's one more. When it rains or hails or that kind of thing, it'll change to overcast. So we won't see the sun anymore. It'll just be a bank of clouds all over the place. So we know this. I mean, that's the basics of how the game works, and we see it over and over, but there's no variety. And in real life, as we know, there's it's an area where there's huge variety. You never see the same thing in the sky twice, other than the sun maybe coming overhead. But the clouds are always in a different position, and they're constantly changing. So I know I've seen some guys in the past, they were pretty handy with a shader. They would hook it up to a skybox like this, and you could see the clouds move. There was some kind of, I forget what it was called, a scroller shader. But the trouble that always happened with those is once you reached sundown or sunset, then you could watch your sun continue moving all over the screen. And that wouldn't do any good. We know that the sun, of course, it sets in the west. And that's where, it isn't going to go all over the screen. So that kind of posed a problem from that approach. But what we could try is having a whole bunch of different textures, sky textures, to put inside our skybox. And again, this is literally a box. They had to be clever because, let's see, am I pointing the right angle? This would be southwest. Right about where that car is. Oh, just disappeared. Might even be about where the edge of the box is. You can almost see a crease over there, kind of. It is literally a square edge. And they've had to be clever how they put the texture in there to adapt kind of around the square edge so that looking off in the distance, it doesn't appear to be a square edge. So, but it is, when I've taken it apart and looked at it, or anybody else, it is literally a square box. Hence the name Skybox. I know in later versions of Farm Sim, someone made kind of a dome-shaped skybox object. It wasn't literally square, nor was it entirely circular, but it was kind of somewhere in between. I don't know if it was octagon shaped, or if it had more sides than that, maybe a few more. But you had a little rounder approach to it, and it's just another style. So some of these older versions of ArmSim, I don't know that anybody used it in making one of their own mod maps. So in later versions of ArmSim, mappers could come up with their own skybox, and you had some flexibility to put your own in. But I think in ArmSim 09 and earlier, it was done a little differently. So if you wanted your own skybox, you had to literally put it on the C drive, versus in your map in the folder, because the game at load didn't look at your map, your mod map. It looked for the sky texture in the game files itself. So all that to say is in ArmSim 17, I made a mod I called it Sky Swap. And what it did is it took the textures that we see in here and swapped them out each night at midnight. And actually there were several skyboxes. I even used the ArmSim 09 skybox. I dragged all those in when I made it in 17. And then I took that dome object for a skybox, and I said, well, what if we put that in there? Because boxes are a little bit limited to deal with. You have to have the texture set up a certain way. The dome one was much more flexible. A single texture would work, whereas these skyboxes, you can't really tell by looking at it. Each skybox has at least 2 textures for each type. So when we look, what we're looking at right now is definitely a skybox. This is a standard ArmSim 09 skybox. It has 2 textures, one on the side of the box and then one directly overhead. Well, the dome was set up such that you only needed to have one texture, and it would wrap it all around the dome. And if you look straight up, which we'll see in a moment, you could kind of see the creases, where it came together. But it worked pretty slick. It was a little bit easier to put together. So I made this, and I dragged in all those textures. I scoured the internet for all these. You got to get a special type of texture in order to wrap it in a 3D object. And it has to be one of those. It's more than just a panoramic texture. It literally goes 360 degrees. So some of the best sky pictures that can be taken are taken out at sea, actually, where you have no obstructions on the horizon and all you see is literally the sky. And so I tried to find as many pictures as I could of different times of day, of cloudy overcast, of sunrise, sunset, and so forth and so on. And there's a lot of them out there that were copy protected and whatnot that I couldn't use. But I ended up getting, I think, several hundred different skies. And I made a second mod with those, and I called it a sky pack. So the first is Sky Swap. It's a basic mod where it has a few additional skyboxes, a few additional textures, and it can be run in its own right. It has a script in it that swaps all these skies out, and it remembers them in the save game file, and hopefully gives the player a better experience, by just having more variety in the sky to look at. And in the pack, the script is set up so that it can detect whether or not the sky pack is present. And if it is, it will load those kind of into the mod. So really the sky pack, it's kind of just a data set, if you will. It has a mod desk XML file, but really that's it. Oh, and it has another XML file in there that kind of catalogs all the skies and those kinds of things. But really the only purpose of it is so that it can be looked up by the other mod. But those two working in tandem, when you think of all the different combinations of sunrise, sunset, daytime, overcast, and nighttime, There's literally millions of different combinations of skies that can be had. So I'll maybe show a couple of those in a little bit so you can see some of the variety that's in there. But while I'm in here, I'll just quit talking and show maybe kind of how this works. So obviously right now we're on the daytime. Oh, and if you'll notice, I'm fast forwarding time just a little bit. See how the cloud moves? That was another thing I wanted to build in real life, we all know the clouds move. Now you'll see by the little green up in the upper right hand corner, I'm on 1x time. So the movement is barely discernible if you sit here and watch it. If we speed up time just a little bit, I'll put it on 4 times. Oops. Well, or I was going to try to. Do I have an error popping? No, I don't. Well, it's not wanting to increase. Anyway, so much for that other mod I tried to do. If I fast forward just a little bit here, that key seems to work. You'll see that all it's doing is it's taking the skybox as a whole and it's spinning it in a circle. So we can see up here the approximate center, and yeah, it's spinning the sun a little bit. You kind of got to suspend reality a little bit. But slowly over the day, this thing will turn. And it's random every day. It may stay stock still, or it may turn, let's see, right now it's going to the left. Other times it may go to the right. So it determines at the start of each day how many rotations it'll make during the day. I think it'll do up to 10. So if it does 10, one way or the other, you can probably see it move pretty easily, even if the speed is only 1x. But if it's slow or if it isn't moving, then you obviously it'll be harder to see unless you speed up time and you see this. So I'm just going to speed up time a little bit. Again, this is the standard skybox that comes with the game. So we're just going to fast forward. We'll get to sunset. So you see, and it's going to quit spinning when we reach sunset, somewhere around 21.5. There you go. So it isn't spinning anymore because we have a sun there, and there the texture is. So I'm going to speed up past midnight here. And there we go. We have a new sky in here, and this one is on the dome, and there's a good old Milky Way, approximately in the location of the sky, I think, where it's supposed to be. But this is one of the sky textures that I found that was just spectacular. And maybe if I was better at texture work, I could do some more with this and make it truly brilliant. But I was just thrilled to find some additional textures. So it doesn't spin, even though I'm fast forwarding time. Let's see, I'm looking towards the west. I'll turn now towards the east, and this will go all night long, kind of as is. And then as we approach morning, it'll fade out. And as you'll see, if you know what the regular skybox looks like, this is something totally different. The clouds are all in a different place from what we were looking at a little bit ago. Well, I wonder what that little thing is up there. Like I say, I'm not a texture artist, so that might be some artifact that I mistakenly left in. But this is a sample sunrise texture. So it'll fade, and now the sun magically got to the height of the sky. So it's sitting up there, and it's a clear blue day. And you know what? This isn't the best texture in the world. All I'm trying to show is there can be a variety of skies. So now it appears it's going to start raining pretty soon. So we have a cloudy overcast. That's also a different texture than I think comes with the regular skybox. So it's just one of them that randomly popped in. So we'll fast forward through the rain here. And Oh, and by the way, some of these textures can be set to not rotate. And obviously, if we're going to see the sun in the sky like this, you don't want your sun roaming all over the sky. So this particular texture, I'm pretty sure there's something in the code that tells it not to rotate, which it isn't. So let's just fast forward some more. We'll get to sunset and see what happens. It's about 21 and a half. There we go. Whoa, except I don't know what that is. Interesting. Well, here I do this video on how this mod's supposed to be, and it's got some screwball thing going on. Again, I guess the point I'm trying to show, and I'm still trying to adapt this to ArmSim 09. Maybe it's something in the coding. Maybe I could just check real quick, see if I'm popping an error. Can't load resource. All right, so this is giving me some feedback that maybe I have something to work on. So I'll check that out in the error thing again. It's still kind of a work in progress. So yeah, don't look up with that looks hideous. I have no idea what's going on up there, but it almost looks like, yeah, there's some other texture in there that shouldn't be there. Anyway, this is apparently supposed to be a sunset. That didn't really look like much of a sunset, so whoa. All right, so now this is really making a monkey out of me. I have no idea what that texture is. Wow. But we're back on the next day. And okay, we got overcast, day texture, and it's moving around. Oh, don't look too close at the ad. I see more artifacts in the texture. You wouldn't believe some of the work I had to do on some of these textures where it had a sky picture someone had taken that was beautiful, but then it would have buildings and trees and shrubs all over it, and I had to try to scrub those out. And sometimes I wasn't successful. So here once again, we're dealing with a sunset. Let me check my errors again. Yeah, it's having some issues looking some of these up. So definitely got some things here to work on. But I hope what you're seeing is some of the possibilities of what can be done. Yeah, and it looks like it's this one here failed entirely. So yep, I got some errors in there to deal with. So let me go from the game over to just show you some of these textures. And I apologize, this isn't showing the best here. But again, I hope you see the potential. Let me show you if I can get out of the game here. From in here, when you look at that, this is abominable, I guess, to try to show something that's in a mod, because it obviously didn't load a texture. So I got a few things I need to fix in this. But hopefully this shows a little bit of what's possible and what I hope to release at some point, so that we have something interesting in the sky to look at and not just on the ground. So thanks for listening, and you take care. Bye-bye.